So this is Lightroom. This is Lightroom 4, as you see up here. Differs from Lightroom 3 in a number of different ways, including its ability to deal with bringing pictures in and then sending them off to internet or cloud-based services. But we won't worry about that for now. We'll worry about the functionality of Lightroom, and we'll get some pictures into the catalogue, as it's called, and once we've got those pictures into the catalogue, we will then develop them, and after we've developed them, we will output them to a disk as though it was going to be used for electronic purposes, so whether that is for a web-based service or whether that's for sending off to a print lab to produce some images. So Lightroom's organised in what's termed a number of modules, and these are the modules up here. So the first one is Library, and as its name suggests, it's about storing things, cataloguing them, cross-referencing them, and allowing you to be able to add keywords to images so that you can find them again. And so the very first thing that we ever do in Lightroom is to bring pictures into the libraries, and the library module is the top left there. The next thing that we do once we've brought images into the library is that we develop them. And the reason that Lightroom's called Lightroom as opposed to Darkroom is that you actually do it on a computer, and you can do it in full daylight if you wish, rather than having to do it in a darkened room with a safe light. So this works in exactly the same way that developing images in a darkroom would work. So everything from being able to correct exposure, to be able to selectively dodge and burn images, to be able to selectively manipulate them, adjust color, adjust contrast levels, brightness levels. We can do all of that in the develop module. The next module along is not really the next one in the process, but it's the next one in this sequence, and it's called Map. And that's allowing you to be able to take the images that you've brought into your catalogue in the library, and to be able to actually place them on a map in the world. So Map actually connects to Google Earth and Google Images, and allows you to be able to actually put your images into a geographic database, if you like. The next one along, which we won't get a chance to look at tonight in this tutorial, is Book, and that allows you to actually connect your images into a photo book. So if you wanted to create a book of your images that you would actually print, so if you were going to make a tabletop, coffee table book of images that you might put some annotation on, that you might actually produce and give to family and friends, that's where you would do it. Slideshow is the module that we use in order to take the images that we have brought into the catalogue in the library that we've developed. When you've got a group of images together, you can put them into a slideshow and use them for something. So whether you put them onto the web, or whether you actually use them for your own use, or even for for a camera club use, maybe when you're doing a members night and you want it to show your own images, you do that in Slideshow. And then finally we have the print module, and the print module does exactly what it says on the tin there, really, is that once you've got the images into the catalogue in the library, and I keep re-emphasising this because that's the order you do things, and you've developed them, and you've probably put them onto the map, you actually want to process those images to print them at the size that you want to output them, and that's what you do in the print dialog. And just to give you a very quick view, we have also a web gallery. So we have stuff for the web is the last one. So if you're using images and you're putting them into some form of slideshow or some sort of web-based thing that you might want to put on your web page, you would do it in that module. But before we get anywhere, let's go back to the library. So we'll click on the library module and we'll have a look at this module a little bit. So let's have a look at the layout of Lightroom. Lightroom starts, it's really, if you imagine the workflow in Lightroom going from left to right, that's kind of how we work, and that's the same in the modules going left to right, as well as the things on the screen going left to right. So the very first thing that we've got here in Lightroom is the Navigator, and that allows me to look at an image. I can turn that off, or I can turn that on so that you can hide things. And when we're working at low resolution like we are here for presentation and projector purposes here, or for recording as we're doing, you can turn things off so that they don't clutter the screen. The next one down is the catalogue, and that's the idea of being able to look at what is in your catalogue. And what is a catalogue? A catalogue is nothing more than a selection of things that are cross-referenced. And those catalogues are stored in a library. Just in the same way that if you went into a library in the town centre, you would be able to look through a catalogue that might contain all the references to the books that are in the library. A catalogue is exactly the same here. And in this case, my catalogue saying I've got 87 pictures. Well, that's only because this is a teaching module. In my own Lightroom catalogue, I have over 250,000 images. But in this one, there's 87. And it tells you a bunch of other things. We have a thing called Quick Collection, which we'll come back to another time, that allows you to store images that you can quickly process them. Then it tells us how many images are in the previous import. So the last time I bought a bunch of images off of a disk, it tells you how many there were, and I could click on those and it would go to the last import. The next thing we worry about are folders. Now, even though we're talking about catalogues and libraries here, we are really storing the images that we bring into Lightroom via the library module. We're storing them on a disk somewhere. So whether that is storing them on the computer's internal hard disk, or whether it's storing it on an external disk, or on a network disk, or even in the cloud on the internet, you are really storing images in folders. And this little module here allows you to see those folders. We'll come back to that. Then you can store collections. You can actually create collections of your own. So you might have a collection that is all of your holiday pictures, or another collection that is all of the pictures of your grandchildren. However you want to have them, you can create collections. They're there for you. But one of the things that you can do is that Lightroom comes with a predefined set of what's termed smart collections. So the images that you bring in, that you actually tag as being red, which is maybe the ones you're going to use, if you click on that smart collection, that will take you to all of the red images in the catalogue. Likewise, 5 stars. Often when you bring images into Lightroom, you give them a star rating, and we'll have a look at that when we bring some images in a moment. You might want to look at all of the images you've brought in the past month, or the ones that you've recently modified. Now, Lightroom doesn't just deal with still images. Now, these days in Lightroom 4, you can deal with video files. So those of you that are using your SLRs, your digital SLRs for taking bits of video, you can bring all of that into Lightroom, and you can actually process video in Lightroom as well. That's the subject for a future occasion, but you can do that. And then you can actually find all of the images that you as of yet haven't keyworded. Now, keywording, as we've talked about previously, is really important in terms of finding images, and we'll have a look at that in a moment as well. And then some of the really, really interesting things are the publishing services. So how you get your pictures onto the likes of Flickr and Facebook or other services, and there you can actually go off onto the Adobe website and find a whole bunch of other services. So like Photolabs, Photobox, SmugMug, all of these kind of guys, you can bring some settings in for those. But I think really for the most purposes, for camera clubs, having your own Flickr account is really quite important. Who's got a Flickr account? Yeah? Great. And the others that haven't, Flickr, spelled F-L-I-C-K-R, is completely free. So you can create a Flickr account, and once you've got a Flickr account, you can actually use Lightroom to process your images and then store them on your Flickr account. And what's really useful there is that they can be available for the world to see. And when you come to a camera club night, instead of having to bring a disc or a memory stick with all your images on, we can just look at your Flickr page. And that's much easier. So they're all stored out there on the cloud. So that's kind of how we start on the left-hand side there. So that's really about storing things in the catalogue. The middle image the middle section here, the middle pane, is clearly a set of thumbnails, and that can work in a different way. So it's either using a set of thumbs that are various different sizes. As you can see there, I can vary the size of the thumbnails, or I can look at a single image, or I can look at a bunch of images. So if I select some images, so for instance I select those three, we can then look at them side by side. So in the library module, this is a bit like the light box in our conventional photography. So you have a bunch of slides, you have a bunch of negatives. How do you select them? How do you go through them? Well, you don't develop them all, do you? You actually put them onto a light box. And this is like your light table or your light box in conventional photography, allowing you to be able to quickly go through images, sort them, decide which ones you want, put aside the ones that you want to work on another time, and just find the ones that you want to work on now. So that's what the middle table is. So if you like, that's our light table. And then our right-hand module is involved in doing things to the images. So at the very top, the most important thing in digital photography is the histogram, and that tells us the balance of tones and the balance of colour in an image. And if we remember back to when we've talked about this before, the histogram describes everything you see in the selective image from the very blackest blacks on the left hand side right here to the whitest whites on the right hand side right here, and the range of tones is from black to white, and the amount of tones at a particular tonal value is the height of the histogram. And you'll see here in this histogram that we've got four different things. We've got grey, which is the brightness, the luminance, and we've got red, green and blue for the three colours that make up all images in digital photography. And where they overlap, so for instance where the red overlaps the green, we get a contrasting colour, so for instance yellow. Okay, we could actually, in some of the settings in Lightroom, which we'll look at another time, we could change that so that we only see luminance, or we only see the three colours. Also, the histogram tells you something about the image, and in this case, this image, it says, was taken at ISO 2000 on a 16mm lens at an aperture of f5 at 1/60th of a second. So that's quite interesting to be able to look and learn something from your images by looking at the data that's been captured. The next block down is a thing that's called Quick Develop, and that allows you to apply rough and ready settings to your images as you bring them in. Let's turn that off because we're not going to use that in the way that we work. But we are going to use the module that's called keywording. And as we bring some images in a moment, we'll see what this does. Okay, and then the next one down is our keyword list. At the moment we don't have any keywords in. This will all become clear in a moment. The metadata. The metadata is the data that's stored with every single image that tells you the details with relation to that image. So for instance here, the file name, the folder that it sits in my library, the title if you've got one, a caption, the copyright status, who created it, the location, any rating you've applied, any labelling. Now, we get into some of the important stuff. When it was captured in terms of time and date, because that's really important in terms of finding things. The dimensions of the image, so how big is that image? The cropped size, so the original size and the cropped size. The exposure detail, which we also saw up here in the histogram. The ISO rating of the image. Did the flash on the camera fire? Well, you can tell if it's using dedicated flash or if it's using built-in flash. If you're using studio flash, that information wouldn't be stored. The make of the camera it was taken on, the model of the camera it was taken on, the lens, and we'll see why lens is important in a while. And if your camera actually captures GPS details, global positioning system details, that will be the location. So that will be the latitude and longitude of the position that you took that picture at. And if your camera does actually capture latitude and longitude, and a great example of cameras that do, any of your smartphones will capture latitude and longitude. If you take images with your iPhone or your Android phone, when you bring them into Lightroom, if you've turned on location services on your phone, the latitude and longitude of where you took it will be there, and that information that's in that field there will automatically be transferred onto the map to locate your image so that you can see where it is in the world. Alright, so we'll look at that. Okay, so that's kind of the library module. Are we alright with that so far? Shall we see what it actually does? Yeah, shall we bring some pictures in? So, the other function of the library module in Lightroom is to allow you to take images that may be stored on your local hard disk inside your computer, an external hard disk, which is what we're going to use today, or it might be from a memory card reader, the card that's out of your camera, plugging it into a memory card reader, bringing it in from there, from a USB memory stick, or actually even a CD. Any device that allows storage, Lightroom can read from. And in order to read from it, we have to click the obvious button, which is import. So that's what we're going to do now. So there we are, we're in the import module. And the import module, once again, like the library module and like every module in Lightroom, is based upon a number of panes, generally 3 panes. In this case, this is the source or the input where we're going to take things from. When we start clicking on some images, they will start appearing here in the middle. And where we're going to send them to is on the right hand side. So as I said before, the workflow is always left to right. Left to right. So my images in this particular case are on an external drive, and that's called My Passport for Mac. That's my external drive. And I'm going to look here in a folder I've stored them on, which is pics. I happen to have taken some images today, which we'll have a look at, and they happen to be stored in a folder a little bit down the list here. Yep, because these actually have been exported from Lightroom, really. So we'll click on those, and as soon as Lightroom discovers a folder that's got pictures in, what it will try to do is it will try to produce a thumbnail image of the images that are on the disk. And as you see there, there's a bunch of images. Yeah, so they're all the images that are on that folder in that structure inside my disk. So you could look anywhere on your external media to bring images in from. Is that okay? Is everyone quite comfortable with that? Yeah? Okay. I have the ability now to check them all or uncheck them all. Maybe I only want to bring two or three images in. Maybe I don't want to bring them all in. So let's just bring in a couple of images. I don't know which one. Maybe that one. Maybe that one. Maybe that one. And so on. You get the idea. Yeah, so we'll just pick a bunch of images from a real job today. So we'll just go back up. We'll pick a nice little kind of portrait-y kind of shot. Something like that. And maybe one more for luck. Let's go for that one. Okay, so we've selected a number of images, but what do we want to do with them? Well, that's what the function of the block on the right hand side is. So firstly, file handling. It asks us, what do we want to do with the images? There is a box here that says render previews. Now, the images that are stored on this disk are all high resolution raw files, all taken with a Canon 1DX. All right, so they're very large files. If I tell Lightroom to produce a render, i.e. develop the images so that we can see them at highest resolution straight away, it will take forever to bring them in. What we want it to do is that we want Lightroom to just reference the images, and then we'll actually render them when we actually want to look at the image, not when we're bringing them in. So I always set that to minimal. I always tick this box as well because this box allows Lightroom to look through your catalogue to see whether or not you've previously imported it. Because what you don't want are 2 copies of everything, do you? Yeah, so that one's quite important. If you want to, at this point, you could actually click on the box that allows you to make a duplicate. So as you're bringing your images in, you could make a duplicate. And then apply during import, it asks us, what do you want to do during import? Now this is where we have to make some settings. And the first one is develop settings. Any developed setting at all in Lightroom can be applied to images when you bring them in. But you probably don't want to do that because you want to make the decisions after. You don't want Lightroom doing it for you. But the one you probably want to do is the metadata one, and it's in there that we can actually add copyright and title information as we go through. So the very first thing we want to do, this is the first time this has been done, so I'm going to edit some presets. Okay, so I click on that box. The first thing that happens is that we have the ability to add some copyright information. So I might want to say copyright 2012. The copyright status is copyrighted, yeah, or I might want to say that is Keith Blundy, which is me, my company name, yeah, 2012. I could put my website URL in there if I wanted to, URL, yeah, you understand what that is, a web address. So I might say that that's www.ages.com, yeah. The next thing I might want to do is who's the creator? Well, that's always me because this is my Lightroom database. What else do I want to do? I might want to put my creator's email, I want to put my creator's email address or website address. I'll copy the website address again. Yeah. The date created, and you get the idea. You can go through and you can set any information that you want to set every time. For me, that's the minimum. What we do here is we set the copyright information and we apply that every single time to every single image we bring in, because I want to copyright my images. They're my work and I want to be able to copyright them. So I'm going to store that in a preset. So if I click on the preset button and say save current settings as a new preset, and then I'll just call that Keith's normal. Okay, and we'll create that. That's done now. Now you'll see that we have in our metadata settings my preset that I've just created. Yeah? So I'm now going to apply that every single time I bring images in to my catalogue. I'm going to add some data to the image. And in this case, it's the copyright information. The next and most important stuff that you do as you bring images in is that you keyword them, because it's keywording that allows you to be able to actually find those images again. So in the case of myself, the keywords I always add are, firstly, I add my company name. I then start adding a little bit of detail about who's it for. In this case, it was for Durham Diocese. The name of the church is St Mary's, and that's in Cockerton. And that's Darlington. And the name of the vicar here is Damon Bage. All right, so I might just say that that's my keywords that I want to apply to every single image that I bring in from this sequence, because they're all the same. You might have different ones, and if you've got loads and loads and loads of different images, you might not actually put a load of keywords when you bring the batch in. You might do the keywords individually later, and we'll come back and do that. So there we go, that's my basic image information. But what you will see here is that on the right hand side, it's not asking me where I want to store those images. And that's because Lightroom's quite smart, and it knows that it's not importing these images from a memory stick or anything like that. It's actually importing it, in this case, from a hard disk. So instead of asking me, do I want to copy the images somewhere, it knows that it's already on a hard disk, so it's just saying, why don't you just add them to the catalogue? But I can change that. I have a number of options. I can copy the images as digital negatives. We don't want to be doing that. I could copy the images from the source disk to another disk as I bring them in. And now you see that Lightroom has opened up a whole load of new possibilities. The destination. So it's going to take it from the source destination, from the source, and put it into the destination. And in this case, there's a list of all of my disks on my computer. I can pick where I want to put them, and it asks you, do you want to put them into a subfolder? If I click that, it will go into a subfolder. You can always call a subfolder, you could name the subfolder you want to bring it into. So you might say import, or import even. And you might do it, organise it by date into another folder, the original folder, the date format, whatever. So if you're copying images, you get the option to import them into a new destination. If I'm just adding them to the catalogue, you don't get that. And in my case, I just want to add them because they're already on my hard disk. That's all I want to do. So there we go. That's very simply moving from an external disk into my catalogue, and in this case, I'm importing them by adding the images, not by copying the images. And you'll notice that Lightroom tries to be clever these days. There's a little picture of the disk it's coming from. There's an arrow that's pointing you to the way it's going to import them by adding. And then there's another picture over here of the internal hard disk. So it tries to make it as simple as it can for you. So let's click that import control and let's see what happens. Okay, so it did that pretty quickly. It was only a few images. If there'd been lots of images, it would have taken a whole lot longer. Now you will see, for those of you that are observant, that the images actually look soft or blurred at the moment. That's because we said don't render them as the minimal amount. And as you can see, as time has gone on there, they've snapped into focus. Can you see that? So if I double click on an image now, it brings it up in the browser window in the middle there. We've got our histogram information that we looked at before. There's the information on the right hand side that we talked about before, because we're still in the library module. But now my library module for that particular image has a whole bunch of additional data for it. Yeah. And what we're going to find now is that if I click on the keywords, we have a list now of the keywords that we've set for that image. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah, there's my keywords. So now, one image at a time, I can now add to my keywords. So what might I say about this one? I might say that this is a head and shoulders. Yeah, it's selective focus, tight crop, yeah, blurred background, yeah, because that's unique to that particular image. Everyone happy with that? So I've stored that. I'll go to this one. This is a different one again. So now I might add to this image. It's not head and shoulders anymore, it's now wide angle. And it's looking serious. Yep, you get the idea. Okay, so that's the keywords for that particular image. And we could do the same for every single image that we were bringing in. But the fun doesn't start really now until we move away from the cataloguing. So we've catalogued those images, we've brought them in, we've catalogued them, we've added keywords to them. The next module is the develop module. And just before we do that, we'll just recap very quickly on why we have actually brought images in to our catalogue and keyworded them. So if we go back to the very top of all of the images in this catalogue, and we now want to find the image that says blurred background. Now, we've only got a few images, so that would be relatively easy. But if there was 250,000 images in here, trying to find the image that was from St Mary's in Cockerton that had a blurred background, that would be kind of difficult. So we just go to the library module at the top, click on there and say find. And as soon as the find window comes up, we can say St M. Yeah. So as soon as it starts to actually auto find things, St Mary, and then we want to say blurred. Yeah, and Lightroom's clever, it's found the image that is from St Mary's that's got a blurred background. That's why we keyword images, because it makes finding things at a later date when you've got tens of thousands of images in your catalogue very easy. Okay, so let's just come out of that. Let's go into the develop module now. We're going to pick this image because this one has got some work it needs doing to it. We'll double click on that, and the first impressions of that image is that even though the exposure is pretty good, yeah, we've actually got an image here that has got lots of contrast in it. You know, lots of darks, lots of lights, and the mid-range is a bit muted. So we'll go into our develop module and we'll see what we can do with that. So we click on the develop module. Lightroom opens up in a completely new situation, but once again, 3 modules. Left-hand module is input, middle module is the actual image that we're working on, and the right-hand module is the settings. Okay, and I'm just going to pause us a little bit there just so that I can have a quick slurp of tea.